Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please stand and salute the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you remain standing? Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to tonight's meeting. This is our voting meeting for November. It will go relatively fast once we get into the voting part. Everything we'll be voting on tonight was discussed at last Wednesday night's work session. So we've had a week to ask questions or think about any of these items that we will be voting on. Mrs. Conrad, was
Mrs. Elfish. Here. Mr. Hammerschmidt.
Here.
Mr. Hill. Here. Mr. Tetzel.
Here. Here.
And Mrs. Press.
And I have things a little bit out of order. Item E, recognition of meetings. October 8th from 7 to 7:31 regular meeting. 7:33 to 8:20 executive session for personnel. November 3rd. 5:40 to 6:15 athletic committee, and November 5th, 7 to 7:45 was our work session. We have a presentation tonight for Mr. Leland Jones, so I will turn this over to.
So Leland is our Pride and Promise Award winner today. Leland, come here. Okay, this is Leland. All right. How long have you been with us now? 3 years. Let me tell you a little bit about Leland. So Leland was given a binder from a staff member, Jackie Kabolka, to help organize his academic materials. Leland thanked Mrs. Kabolka and returned to his classroom. When he went back to his classroom, Leland discovered there was an envelope inside the binder. And inside this envelope was $80 in cash. Leland didn't hesitate. He immediately let his teacher know what he had found and asked if he could return the envelope to Mrs. Kabolka. This act showed that Leland demonstrated a high level of honesty for someone of his age to realize that money was not his, even though it was a folder given him, shows a high level of maturity and integrity. So we want to give you a district honor. Mrs. Columbus is going to come and give you a little memento, and we're going to take a picture. Mom, I'm sure you want a picture, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right, so let's come over here and we'll give him his. All right, so what this is, Leland, okay, is a certificate of excellence for Laurel's Pride and Promise awarded to Leland Jones. And you take a picture of you and we put it up on the wall. So if you take a He's also a student with Mrs. Rich. Mrs. Rich, any comments on Leland?
Always doing great things. Very proud of us.
Congratulations. Yeah. Go right outside. You guys can take a picture while this part. You can go take pictures, unless you want to hear about the audit report. Just go fast.
Not as exciting as that.
Thank you, buddies.
Well, under the exciting part of the meeting tonight, this is our audit report for the year ending June 30th, 2025.
Hello, everyone. So you should have in front of you a 2-page document that has a bunch of lines, a bunch of numbers on it. That's what we'll go over tonight. Jen should have emailed you out your full audited financial statements. They're about 55, 60 pages now. They are a required document. All the required elements are in there, a lot of important information. It's very hard to flip through that big document. So we take that 60-page document, summarize it down into 2 pages, what we think is the most important things, and that's what we'll go over tonight. The other nice thing about this summary is we can show comparatively your June 30th, 2025 year end compared to your June 30th, 2024 year end. And we'll just focus on the main variances between those 2 years. Your full audited financial statements only show 1 year. Right, so if you look at the top of the page, well, and it does show you though, if you want to refer back to the financial statements, you have the page numbers down the side there that correlate to that big document. If you look at the top of the page, the most important thing, the thing everyone cares about, you had a clean audit opinion this year. So the numbers were all stated correctly. You didn't have any findings. Jen does a great job of the accounting, so she's always a pleasure to work with. So we'll focus on the general fund here, your main fund. And we first look at your balance sheet. So that's your total assets, liabilities, and your fund balance. So your total assets, you'll see there that first line. Your assets are things like cash and your accounts receivable. So accounts receivable are amounts you're owed at the end of the year, mostly from taxes, state subsidies, federal subsidies, things like that. You'll see you had $9.3 million of assets in your general fund, which is a decrease of over $700,000 from the prior year. And as we'll see as we look towards the bottom of this page, you did have a net loss for the current year in the general fund, and we'll talk more about why that was. But the main reason for the decrease in the assets is basically timing. So you had a decrease in the amounts you were owed. In the prior year, you were owed money for your PCCD grants and your ESSER funding. You didn't have those at the end of this year. So it was just mostly a timing thing. The next line item is your liabilities. So that includes, the bulk of that is your accounts payables, so what you owe to vendors at the end of the year for purchases made in 2025, and then your accrued salaries to your employees. There was a decrease in that of about $176,000. So at the end of 2024, you owed money for the water system project. You didn't have that large payable at the end of this year or anything like that. So if we go down to that line, total fund balance. So that's basically what you have left at the end of the day to spend. If you take all your assets, list all your liabilities, that's your fund balance. You'll see $6.647 million compared to $7.23 at the end of prior year. So a decrease of $592,000. That is your net loss for 2025. And again, we'll explain more about why that is. Now we like to break down your fund balance, we're required to do this, into different components. So you'll see they're non-spendable. We have to pull out prepaid assets. That's what that number is. And then you have an assigned fund balance. So school districts are required to assign monies that they know will be for future spendings. And they should be approved by the board, which Jen will do that. So we pull out, you'll see there that number, $6.483 million. So a calculation has come up with to set aside for capital projects, future retirement, and OPEB. And what OPEB is your other post-employment benefits. So things you pay out to people after they retire, such as health insurance. So we know those are big numbers. So we try to set aside money at the end of June 30th. We know you're going to have big future costs in those items. So that's what that assigned fund balance is for and why it's so large. Then you have your unassigned. And you'll see that's $129,478. So it doesn't seem like a huge number, but according to Act 1, you have to keep this at below a certain balance. So we felt like that was a good number. Any questions on anything on that, the balance sheet? Balance?
The numbers. Again, how do you know whether you're vulnerable or just
The Act 1, it's 8% of, Jen could explain it better, right?
8% of your budget
Oh, okay.
can be unassigned.
Okay. All 8%.
Yeah, you don't want too much in unassigned because then, people are like, well, get raises or, what are you spending money on, that kind of thing. Right, if we go to your income statement, so those are your revenues and expenses for the year, you'll see their general fund revenues. We have to break them down between local, state, federal. You did have an increase in your local revenues of $348,000. So your assessed value of your real estate increased. So that caused more real estate tax income, and you also had an increase in your earned income taxes. So as people earn more, they have to pay more in to earn income taxes. So that was the reason for that increase. Your state sources decreased about 267,000, and that was basically the environmental repair grant that you had in 2024. And then we knew this was coming. Your federal sources decreased about 718,000 as a result of that ESSER money going away. So you see there, total general fund revenues, they decreased about 639,000 compared to 2023. But then you'll see you have that budgeted revenues there, 19,768,000. So you did actually come in over budget. And like we talked about, that's good. You want to be conservative on your revenues when you budget. So you came ahead of your budget, which is good. The total expenditures for the general fund, they did decrease just over 400,000. So last year you had a lot more capital projects you were paying out for. The security equipment, a roof replacement, water and library projects. Of course, you did have an increase in wages and health insurance that kind of offset those decreases. And you can see what you budgeted for expenditures there, almost right on line. So that line, excess of revenues over or under expenditures, that's your net loss for the year, 592,000. Quite honestly, you know, the ESSER spending was majority of why that. But if you look at that last line, you actually budgeted for a loss of 1.256 million. So you actually came in well ahead of budget. Any questions on anything there?
On the increase in real estate assessment and earned income taxes, what caused that increase? How did we end up making more as a rule?
Because the
I mean, we didn't raise taxes.
Right, you didn't increase the millage, but they assess values to each real estate parcel, as you could call it, and the value that they assess to those increase. And also as more properties are added, that increases the assessed value that they can collect taxes on.
Everybody who got a building permit for
Mhm.
construction.
And it wasn't a huge increase, but it was somewhat. Anything else? All right, the next page we'll just go through quickly and we'd like to highlight. You do have a capital projects fund. Not much occurs there. You just earn some interest income, but you do have $47,000 sitting there that you could spend on future capital projects. Your food service fund, it did have a net loss for the past 2 years. We're seeing this across all the schools we audit, except if they belong to that CEP program where basically all the kids get the free lunches. You don't qualify for that here, which is good and bad. But you'll see there, the amount attributable to depreciation expense, that's more of a paper expense. We have to take depreciation expense on all your fixed assets every year. It's $21,000. So really your food service fund is basically breaking even with your revenues and expenses that you're paying out. And then at the bottom of the page, we just put on there, we are required to put into your financial statements a couple of pages that takes your financial records and converts them to look as if you were a business. It's a requirement that all governments must follow. So we do that for you. So you'll see there, we include all your fixed assets for your governmental funds. We have about $14 million fixed assets. We're required to show your bonds payable, what you owe, and you're paying down that. Just under $3 million now you owe on all your debt. And then those large numbers we talk about every year, the other post-employment benefits, and then your net pension liability. We obtain those numbers from PSERS. Pretty large numbers, but there's not much you can do to get those down. And then lastly on there, you were not required to have a single audit this year. You didn't spend over $750,000 of federal monies. So we didn't have to do the extra compliance testing to make sure that was being followed. Whereas last year we had to test for all that ESSER money. Any questions on anything? If you do happen to go through the big financials and
If you have any questions. Well, thank you. It was
Well,
as
thank
boring
you.
as I expected.
Thank you, everyone.
Item 3 on our reports from standing committees and board. Item 4, any additions to administrative supervisors? Item 5, any comments or questions from the floor relative to the agenda? Item 5, approval of the minutes from the October 8th, 2025 regular meeting of the board.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ketchel, second by Mrs. Brest. Any discussion on the motion? Any negative votes? Any abstentions? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Treasury report, investments and bill listings distributed.
Yes, the recommendation of the superintendent to the board to approve, 7A treasury report for October and B investment report. I put that in the form of the motion, please.
Motion by Mr. Hammerschmidt, second by Mrs. Eldridge. Any discussion on the motion? Any negative votes? Any abstentions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
8, the recommendation of the superintendent of the board to approve general fund bill listing for November 12th, 2025. That's 8. And B, list of food service fund bills. I put that in the form of the motion.
Motion by Mr. Hammerschmidt, second by Mr. Hill. Any discussion on the motion? On the motions? Any negative votes? Any abstentions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 9, board action items, personnel, Mrs. Brest.
I'd like to put in the form of a motion, items A, retirement resignations, item B, FMLA leave, item C, FMLA leave, item D, FMLA disability leave, E, FMLA disability leave, F, school bus instructor, and G, professional development workshops.
Motion by Mrs. Brest, second by Mr. Tucker. Any discussion on any of the motions? Any negative votes? Any abstentions? All in favor? Motion carries.
I should have done H.
It's okay.
Sorry.
So,
Yeah, I'll put in the form of motion, item H, additions to the volunteer and non-instructional substitute listing for 2025-2026.
motion by Mrs. Brest, second by Mr. Tucker. Any discussion on the motion? Any negative votes? Any abstentions? All in favor? Motion carries. Item 10, board action items, committee of the whole. Item A is the student teacher. Item B, student teacher. Item C, comprehensive children's and family services agreement. Item D, outside placement. Item E, IDEA agreements with the Midwestern Intermediate Unit. Item F, cyber services agreement with Seneca Valley School District. Item G, financial assistance, 8th grade. Gettysburg. Motion by Mr. Kessler, second by Mrs. Brest. Any discussion on any of the motions? Any negative votes? Any abstentions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Yeah.
Item H, trip and financial assistance to band choir trip to Orlando, Florida. Motion by Mrs. Eldridge. Second by Mr. Ketchel. Any discussion on the motion? Any negative votes? Any negative vote?
Could you state nay, please?
Any abstentions? All in favor? Motion carries.
Some tally on that then, please.
One nay, 0 abstentions. Just have a hard time with the price with the families. With my own.
I share that with you. And again, I'm gonna ask that, Mr. Lane carry those feelings to the advisors. The cat's out of the bag on this one, but it can't happen again. And prior to whatever next trip they plan, needs to be some type of presentation to the board, and the board reserves the right to limit cost relative to the trip. Yes, sir.
So total for students, 166, is that correct? Is that what we talked about last week?
They get $50 a pop.
You're on again.
Oh, my gosh. Thank you. This is what happens when you get older, you all get there.
I know where you are.
I know there's trip in the motion, but they're two separate trips. Okay. Laurel, thank you. Thank you for that.
I think there are other board members that share those.
Yeah.
concerns.
I mean, I love the band. Lots of kids I know on there. It's just the cost.
And they can be divided up by 3 because they go once every 3 years. So,
Well, we're gonna put a committee together and overlook all these trips and try and, this is a large amount, and I don't think that we can do this on a regular basis. I mean, our communities.
I mean, years ago, they did it once every 3 years because it was.
Well, I think this is once every 3 years,
Yeah,
but
but
the
it's still
issue has
expensive.
become cost, not only are costs accelerating, they're flying instead of driving. Again, is the juice worth the squeeze? As you know, I don't get a vote for, I tend to
You just
be,
need 5 friends.
I need 5 friends. That's tough sometimes, Jeff, but in any event, I share those concerns, and I've expressed those concerns, including the fact that we're gonna take $100,000 here, locally raised funds, and we're gonna give it to Orlando. I got a problem with that.
Is the band ever said, I mean, they're just okay with it?
I haven't heard anything from my parents.
So I'm going to say the following, that if you talk to someone or see some of the social media, I think there is some earnest fundraising relative to that. I don't think there are many little families just stroking a check to cover the whole bill. But I don't think that a proper amount of consideration was given by those who organized this trip to not only, let's not forget, not only the total impact per student who's going, but some of these families are going to feel obligated to go down as well. So now you take that cost times 2, times 3, times 4, times 5.
Okay, item I, PHEAA student teacher agreement. Item J, general fund designations. Item K, audit report for the year ending June 30th, 2025. Item L, field trips, student activity trips. Motion by Mr. Pencil, second by Mrs. Eldridge. Any discussions on the motions? Any negative votes? Any abstentions? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Comments from the floor? Comments, questions from the floor relative to non-agenda items? Nothing online.
One, will we take?
Would you not have anything?
September of 28, I believe. $1.2 million payments, and I think the last one, September of 28.
Jenna, we get an update after, since they passed the budget on, but I was trying to read it before it came, but like as far as the cyber kids and that fees, we get an update on, I was just curious. I read it, but I don't want to make a lot of sense.
Curious. So we've got the big bold categories, if you will, the devil being in the details. Hopefully by next month, we'll be able to give you a better explanation of whether it's the EITC tax credit so they increased the EITC, that was the deal for vouchers. So vouchers are out, but increases in EITC are in. There's also a projection of savings relative to cyber tuition students, correct? Well, the only way there can be a savings is if they charge less. So devil's in the details with that. What exactly are they now able to charge? I know the working number was 8,000 or 9,000. I don't know if that's the voted on number, and I don't know what that means for special education. So for me, and I assume they'll play catch up on the subsidy. So when are we getting our two payments, right? So we've missed two payments. When are we getting those? And what exactly is the cyber tuition rate going to be? And we're getting a whopping 2.7% increase across the board for special education, and that's not keeping up with inflation. So if you look, if you remember from previous budget presentations, although our spending is going up moderately with, the reimbursement goes like this, the expenditures go like this. So the gap between what you're getting reimbursed for and what you're spending locally is increasing.
Any other new business come forward this evening? I will ask for motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Ketchel, second by Mr. Hammerstedt. Any negative votes or abstentions? All in favor? Aye. Motion is, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
And the second.
That's it.